You wanted the best, but you're shit out of luck. Welcome to the KissFAQ Podcast. We're here to waste some of your time and hopefully entertain you for a little bit. So thank you for letting us into your head. Hope we don't do any damage. Welcome to episode 5 of the KissFAQ Podcast. Thank you for joining us and spending some time with us today. The panel this week is Alex, Lonnie, and Jay. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you all for participating in this. Our topic today is pretty straightforward. What do you think is the most overrated and the most underrated album? And we'll do this in 2 sections, in the makeup era and in the unmasked era. Two very different kind of periods for the band. So I'm going to kick it off because I changed the topic at the last minute. And, got to give everyone a chance to rethink their whole plan. So everyone who joined in episode 1 saw my introduction about when I got into the band. And for me, one of the most highly underrated albums in the band's whole catalog, not just the unmasked period. I'm going to hold it up. But for everyone who's listening on Spreaker and iTunes, this album really should have been listened to with your eyes shut. Because when everyone sees this cover, they have preconceptions, they've got attitude about this album, simply, I believe, because of the cover. And I think Paul Stanley once said, everyone seems to listen with their eyes. And maybe this album is most representative of that. Asylum. I love it. I'm guilty. I hold up my hands. I'm an asylumite.
The Asylum album was my dad being in the Navy. He was in Japan for a few years in Asia, and that was one of the first CDs he picked up. And so that was actually one of the first kids CDs, actual CDs I would listen to and stuff. So it's a good album. I like Who Wants to Be Lonely. I think it's an underrated track off the album.
Yeah, and for me, that's, again, it's not just that it's the era that I got into the band, because I hate the visuals, other than the stage that they had, which I thought was extremely cool. They looked like every other band around that time. I mean, Paul Stanley had obviously raided Dee Snider's, wardrobe at one point. Gene had obviously, continued to raid B. Arthur's. Visually, it's a very unappealing era, though highly colored, so they're kind of using shock and awe for me. But the music, King of the Mountain, what an incredible, bombastic start to any album. 2 power ballads on the album, Tears Are Falling and Who Wants to Be Lonely. Unbelievable. I think they're extremely high quality songs. Obviously, Tears Are Falling didn't quite make it as a hit. And then the rest of them, even Gene's starting to come out of his stupor. Animalize had not been a good album for him. Asylum, I think his material's far, far better. And the production, I think, is much better for not having an external producer. So,
Love's Deadly Weapon. It's a great song, in my opinion. I know it gets bashed a lot, but I think Love's a Deadly Weapon is just, it's really fast, it's really hard, it's a great Gene tune that you hadn't gotten in a while up until that point. And I know it's maybe it's not really popular with a lot of in fan bases, but I like that song. I really do, and I think it's one of the better tunes Gene turned out in the '80s. I think
"Trial by Fire" is an underrated anthemic song off the album.
Yeah, overall, I think it's more consistent. I mean, obviously, All Night is, looking back 25, 30 years later, what can you really say about a song like that? I mean, it is what it is, but it was very rooted in the time. Love's a Deadly Weapon, obviously it had been around since 1981. Very cool song, I think.
I've always kind of looked at Asylum as really kind of almost a companion piece to Animalize, not only because there were 2 albums there at this point that, going back, let's just take a step back. Actually, what I really think is that when you look at the track list on Animalize and then you compare the track list on Asylum, there's almost like, you've got Under the Gun on Animalize, and then you've got I'm Alive on Asylum. Then you've got, there seems like some of the songs, there's similarity, I guess, in some of the songs. So I always kind of look at that as almost like they had that template for Animalize and just copied it over to Asylum and then tried to come up with something in a similar vein. I don't know. It's just because, I've had enough, and then you have King of the Mountain. So I don't know. That's just always the way I guess I've always looked at it.
Maybe it is a bit paint by numbers for the template Paul Stanley in particular, guiding the band at that time. I wouldn't disagree with that at all. But I think if it is a paint by numbers album, it's certainly better executed than Animalize was.
No doubt about it.
And maybe that comes down to Bruce. I think the guitar work on it, you didn't have the Bumblebee. Mark is a very unique style, and when you listen to all the work tapes that go on into the Animalize era, very, very different. Bruce reins it back in a bit, but still has all the technical vocabulary to really fit in for 1985. So that's I love the album. I'm Alive. Any way you slice it as well. Great album.
I would say I was so intrigued with Paul Stanley's biography that he had I think he had 2 photos from the Asylum recording sessions. I thought that was really cool. I wish he dived in a bit more on the album, at least on his biography and stuff. But I thought it was cool to see those photos from the sessions.
And what a great video for Who Wants to Be Lonely. For I was 14 years old. Yeah,
absolutely.
I remember the video. So.
Did you mimic the outfit and go to school with the outfit? Because I feel like that would have got you beat up.
I feel like wearing a Michael Jackson Thriller jacket to school or something.
All right, so that's my first underrated album. Who are we gonna pick on next? Alex.
All right. I guess underrated album for me. We'll go with with the makeup side first for myself, but I think it's underrated. Some people it's overrated. It's like what Paul said. Some people can't get enough of it. Some people it's always too much. Got to go with The Elder. I think it's I guess like with Kiss, they always say it's not maybe the best representation of Kiss, but I think them showing their diversity. It's a great album, and I don't know. Did any of you guys see the movie The Giver at all?
Never heard of it.
It was a movie. It came out 2 years ago, but it was originally a book. I read it in 8th grade, and I remember getting The Elder on CD in 8th grade, and I felt like the soundtrack pretty much lined up perfectly with the book, and it was just like this epic trip that I had with the book and the movie. You guys should definitely check out even just Wikipedia, the plot line to The Giver, and then give The Elder a spin. I just thought of the production. I'd love to hear, I think Ace has mentioned he's got some of the original tracks with his lead guitar work and stuff, and so I would love to hear what he had there. I'd love to hear the dialogue that. Remember on the FAQ message board, his FAQ message board, you have the script and stuff, and it's like, oh my goodness, I would just pay whatever you paid for that script, just sit down and just read through it to see what it was fully about. But I think, tracks like The Oath and I as an anthemic song, and I think Ace's track, Dark Light, is just underrated songs that I wish had a little bit more representation on some of the best albums.
Yeah, if you ignore, I guess, Just a Boy and Fanfare, and kind of ignore the attempt at a plotline or reading a plotline into the album, overall musically it's pretty cool. I mean, I always rave about I and the unsung anthem that could have been, but The Oath, what a fantastic track. I remember I couldn't find it living in upstate New York and getting into the band in 85. That album was nowhere to be found. I finally had to trade Van Halen 5150 and a Def Leppard album to a kid for a 2-for-1 to get a beat up cassette. And just hearing The Oath was incredible. Great song.
Well, do you guys, real quick, do you remember when they had the Kiss trading cards, in 98, 99 time frame? Mm-hmm. I remember getting 2 packs, and one of the cards was, they had the album, and one of the cards was The Elder. And I remember I was always so intrigued by the song titles and stuff, because it had the track listing. So I remember going to a record and tape traders in Maryland, and I saw The Elder there, and I was just like, this is what I'm getting, and bought it. And so it's a cool album, and it's different. I think that's the fun thing I like with Kiss. I'm not the biggest AC/DC fan, and my friends always seem shocked, and I'm like, I don't know, all this stuff sounds the same to me. I mean, they're good songs. Back in Black's a great album, but they all sound the same. And the thing I like with Kiss is they've at least always branched out, and you know, call it what you will, them trying to stay with the times and whatnot. But I like the fact they changed a little bit and you know, stretched themselves.
But does it suffer from a packaging challenge like Asylum then? You know, the brown, nondescript, what was it, 1980s record shop camouflage, you know, in those wooden dividers. It just camouflaged itself in.
You know, as much as I love the Elder look, I don't think, you know, having a cover like the Killers cover would have helped them out either with the bright things too, though. So, I don't know. I did, but I've always liked the photo that they did with the white background, well, like the four of them were standing there, kind of in different positions. I don't know if they did a cover like that, if that would have changed things or not.
Well, like the Turkish Elder bootleg, that's kind of cool. But musically, good album.
It's a heavier album too than it gets credit for. You know, it always gets labeled as being just a concept record, but The Oath is really, really heavy, and so is I. And I think it was a starting point of them returning to their heavier roots after doing Dynasty and doing Unmasked. That you could start to see the heavier side of the band start to creep back in after they turned pop in '79 and '80.
Which isn't bad for not really having Aces tremendously involved. I mean, that's probably the one thing it really misses, as good as Paul's guitar work, and who knows, he suggested or alluded to there being other guitarists on there, so who knows who is doing all that guitar work.
And I'll say this real quick, too, the performance of The Oath on the Kiss Cruise, I mean, that double bass that Eric Singer does when they performed it live, I mean, it's just super heavy, so...
I personally could rave about that video of Paul doing The Oath on the cruise every single episode. It'd be like, Paul, you nailed it. Paul, you nailed it. You know, haters, eat it. He nailed it. So, all right, let's move on. Jay, you're in my center window, so let's throw you to the wolves.
All right. Well, I suppose for me, the most underrated Kiss album, I'm going to start with Makeup. Would be Unmasked. And the reason I say that, you know, I think it's safe to say that it's definitely one of the more polarizing Kiss albums, much like The Elder, or in maybe some other instances, Crazy Nights, or Carnival of Souls. It's one of those albums that Kiss fans have a strong opinion about. I think it's a great album. I mean, the production is kind of glossy. I get that. There's a lot of pop songwriting going on there, but I think the songwriting is actually really killer, and I'd almost venture to say that Unmasked is Kiss's one and only power pop album. And even though I'm not a big fan of Vinnie Poncia, especially on the production side of things, I just think the song is loaded with great writing. It's a departure from what people remember, or what people, I guess, expected from Kiss, but the writing was kind of on the wall anyway. I mean, it really, to me, Unmasked was sort of the inevitable conclusion that the band were arriving to after doing Dynasty, because Dynasty was really the first time I think Kiss, or at least in my opinion, the first time Kiss really started to pay attention to trends and looking for more of a mass appeal with I Was Made for Loving You and all of that. But, you know, when Unmasked came out, I don't know. At first, I guess it was tough for me when it first came out because it was so different from what I had expected. But then, you know, a few years later, especially like after Crazy Nights, it really made me sort of reevaluate where that album falls in the Kiss catalog. And, I mean, you know, it's different. I get that. But how can you hate songs like Tomorrow, Talk to Me, Two Sides of the Coin, Naked City, which I think is an amazing song. I even like What Makes the World Go Round, you know, barring the keyboards, of course, but it's great songwriting. So I even like Torpedo Girl. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I know I'll probably get slaughtered for that on the FAQ, but I like the song. It's got a great groove, and it's totally Ace. I mean, that is totally Ace's sense of humor coming out. And that's something you rarely really saw from Ace on any Kiss album. In fact, I might venture to say that's really the only song of its kind as far as just the mood and point of view. So, I love the album. I think it's nearly a perfect album, with the exception of maybe You're All That I Want and Easy As It Seems, which to me are the two songs
that's one of my favorites.
Quality writing. Okay, kill me now. Go ahead, Julian.
The demo of You're All That I Want that's on the box set, I listen to that a lot, actually. I like that. It sounds so much better than the production that ended up on Unmasked, the album, though. When I got the box set and I heard that, I was like, wow, that's how that song's supposed to sound, not the garbage how it ended up on the album.
You're All That I Want is right up there with Read My Body for me. I can't stand that song.
I'm the same
Easy
way.
As It Seems has a funk to it that's very unusual for Kiss. For me, it's got a different feel to it. I mean, it's makes me think more of R&B, just the underlying rhythm on it. Love the song, but Gene, his lyrics on this album, Naked City and She's So European, he seems lyrically adventurous. He's expressing himself in a much more subtle manner than Hump Me. He's writing some topics.
Well, no, she makes love on a brass bed. Is that actually the lyric? I've never looked. She makes love on a brass bed. Is that what it is?
A glass of wine of pink champagne.
Well, all of that's better than Backbone Slip. So
out of the frying pan
into the fire.
And Torpedo Girl, I love that. It's quirky humor that they just never really. The band, maybe they were too serious in that kind of mold, but that is so Ace for what he was doing. I mean, what's the other song he did around the same time with Crazy Joe? Eugene, absolutely kooky kind of songs, which are just what you'd expect from Ace, off the wall. But
and that riff, just the riff in itself is just so unlike anything else that Ace has ever done. So it's really, to me, I think it's a standout song. I know that it catches a lot of flack from Kiss fans. I guess you have to have a sense of humor maybe to appreciate it, but I always really championed that song. I always thought that it was sort of a dark horse in the catalog.
But the whole album's not really power pop. Tomorrow is certainly power pop. The rest of it, Is That You? Always loved that song. When I first heard the album and that was the first song, I was like, wow, this is going to be a really cool album. Then it kind of went downhill with Shandy for me. But, this album, again, is Ace being strong. 3 very strong Ace tracks, just like the predecessor. So, yeah, it's a cool album.
I'll tell you, when I got to see Ace twice, once in 2007, right before he started the Rocky Ride tour. So I remember going to see him on the opening night of the Rocky Ride tour. I think it was like February 19th, 2008. And I was up front. I got to meet the band and Anthony Esposito, and he was super cool. But I remember I was right in front of Anthony the whole show, and he kept talking me take. But I remember when he went into the bass line, he did that medley on the tour. And I remember when he did the bass line for Torpedo Girl, and I was like, no freaking way, they're doing a song from Unmasked. I was wigging out. And I tell you, after seeing them doing it live, though, I gained a whole appreciation. I mean, that bass line to Torpedo Girl is just, I have fun playing on the bass here up on campus and stuff. It's just a fun one to play. Yeah, it's just a fun song.
And Talk to Me was done in 2001 during the Japanese leg of the farewell tour with Ace. Great song.
Going back to Torpedo Girl, I had that on. My wife is not a big Kiss fan, but I was playing Unmasked one day, and Torpedo Girl came on. She's in the car with me. She's like, she just doesn't appreciate it. She goes, oh my gosh, what is this? And he goes, come on, get your feet wet. And she goes, okay, no, just stop it right now. Just turn on something else. This is ridiculous.
Sadly, I think there are a lot of Kiss fans who have that exact same reaction. So she's not alone.
And I will say this, I know Kiss isn't doing the acoustic sail away show, but if they want to do a fun song for the acoustic sail away, if they did You All That I Want, though, like they did on the demo, that'd be kind of cool to see on an acoustic sail away.
Sorry, Julian, but I agree.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm going to just remain quiet on that.
All right, Lonnie.
All right, my most underrated Kiss album, I'm going to start with the Makeup era as well, is Dynasty. I know Dynasty gets a lot of flack from Kiss fans as being the disco Kiss album, the first of the pop albums, but really the disco Kiss album. And I think once you get past I Was Made for Loving You, which was one of the last songs they brought in for the album, but I think once you get past that song, there's a lot of really good heavy rock songs on there. And at the same time, I'm not saying it's one of my top Kiss albums of all time, but I just think it's an underappreciated album. Like, songs like Magic Touch and Save Your Love and even Dirty Livin', I think are really just kick-ass songs. And, yeah, the production is kind of lacking because of Vinny Poncia being the producer on it and giving it the more of the pop-ish and disco feel. But, like, Magic Touch, I think is one of my favorite Kiss songs. And, like, when Paul brought that out on the Live the Win tour and he played that, it sounded so great. I thought it's one of my favorite songs, and the fact that he brought that out, Kiss had never played it before, it just made that whole concert worth it. And, you know, Ace getting 3 songs on the album really showed Ace coming into his own as a songwriter. And then the masterpiece on the album, in my opinion, is Sure Know Something. It's just a classic Paul tune. Really sounded like it could have ended up, you know, almost on like his solo album from the year before. It's just Dynasty wasn't one of the first Kiss albums I bought. I had to go back and buy it because I was born in '79. But going back and getting Dynasty and listening to it, and I knew it had the reputation of being the disco Kiss album. I always liked it and thought it was underappreciated.
Yeah, it's a good album. I mean, Ace, well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad for him, and I guess 1 out of 3 is a cover. Not a big fan of Hard Times, but Save Your Love, that is, I think, one of Ace's possibly best songs within Kiss. It feels like him at the height of his songwriting in the band. Everything after that, you know, the 3 songs on Unmasked didn't really get better than Save Your Love for me. 2000 Man, great cover, great interpretation. I Was Made for Loving You, I just don't see that as disco. I just can't get my head around that being called disco rock. It's got a beat, so it's more dancey, but it doesn't feel disco to me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily know if the rhythm, I mean, I guess, you know, maybe the rhythm could be considered disco. I never really thought of the song as disco, but looking back, I can hear major disco influences in that song. You can tell that there was a very conscious, deliberate plan when writing that song. Maybe in the beginning, that song was not even intended to be what it ended up being. But if you listen to any of and I'm not a disco fan, don't get me wrong, don't mistake this, but Giorgio Moroder, when you listen to the stuff which he was pretty much like, he was kind of, I guess, you know, a lot like maybe some of the big prominent writers that are popular now. He was saturating the airwaves. There were so many of his songs, Donna Summer, I mean, there's a ton that were popular all around that time. And Giorgio Moroder always had kind of a signature style about the way the hook was done and how it was injected into the song. And the chorus to I Was Made for Loving You with the sort of the ooze in the background, that's totally a Giorgio Moroder riff. That's just something that he did. And if you listen to some of the old disco around 78, 79, you'll hear bits and pieces of that in the I Was Made for Loving You song. So that's, to me, I consider it a disco song, but I'm just not a big fan of the album. I think X-Ray Eyes stinks to high heaven. It's absolutely horrible. And Dirty Livin' never did anything for me. I don't know. I think there's a lot of weak stuff on there. I love Charisma. I really enjoy Ace's contributions, and I think Sure Know Something is one of the best written Paul Stanley songs ever. The rest, I don't know, take it or leave it, I guess.
What about Charisma? Charisma. Really,
I love Charisma.
Kind of pulsating. You know, that's again Gene really going into different kind of style. So
it was a change of direction for Gene from the last Kiss album when he's singing Christine 16 and he's singing Love for Sale. For him to turn up a song on a Kiss album, you know, with Charisma is a really different direction for Gene at that point.
But do Kiss fans have a problem with Dynasty and Unmasked because of the musicians on or not on the album? I mean, Gene is alleged to not play a whole lot of bass on either of the albums with, Paul and Ace allegedly, and I just have never seen anything substantiated on that, doing bass on their own tracks. Of course, Peter's drumming on both albums is fantastic. On the one song he plays on, is that why these albums are, kind of held in more of a negative light?
Yeah, and they're kind of seen as the beginning of the end, or the end period, the end of the original lineup. But and that could be, and I think a lot of it too is maybe the image change that the band had at the time, going into the Super Kiss image with the capes and the bigger costumes, and Kiss really became a family type band where you had more and more kids showing up to the concerts at that point, and meanwhile AC/DC's doing Highway to Hell and Back in Black, and it just kind of they kind of lost a lot of their hardcore fan base at the time.
That's what kind of got me. Real quick, Lonnie, I think they like my T-shirt.
Very nice, very nice.
I remember being, I think I've shared it before on the message board many times. I remember being like 5, and my dad had that great Kiss VHS Extreme Close-Up, and it had the clip of the Showing Us Something video. And my dad, he had the Les Paul, and I remember seeing it with Ace with the cape and everything with the Les Paul, and I was like, and being a 5-year-old kid, I was like, I didn't know they were rock, so they're like, that's a superhero with the same guitar that my dad has. That is awesome. And then, so I love Showing Us Something. I mean, when he did it on the Unplugged, I was like, even as a kid, I was excited because at the time that was my favorite song. Dynasty was one of the first CDs I bought on CD. I wish they could go through, and if there was to be an album to do like a Resurrected, I would love to hear like a Resurrected version of like the Dynasty or the Unmasked. And real quick, I don't know if you guys noticed though, when you mentioned the periods though, I mentioned The Elder, Jay, you mentioned Unmasked, and Lonnie, you mentioned Dynasty, 3 consecutive albums going back. Do you think there's like a period of time, or why maybe that period of time is completely underrated at all?
Yeah, it's underrated because of Paul's purple blouse. that Dynasty album and those costumes.
I agree.
Wow.
I think they went too far. I think the black and silver was such a good look for the band. I'm a sucker for the more simplified look, so if I had to pick, I would totally go back to '74 and do the outfits from the Hotter Than Hell tour, just because of, I don't know, they looked more ominous and more threatening and more dangerous as a band. And I just feel like Dynasty, that period of time, was sort of Kiss, I guess, second-guessing themselves and maybe letting other people into their heads.
Yeah.
So the next thing you know, they're more comic booky and maybe a little more mainstream, more Vegas. And, yeah, it just kind of ruined it for me. I don't, now that you mention it, yeah, I could see maybe this period is underrated in some respects, but it's definitely a dark period for the band, for sure.
There's some good music, but, it's so safe. If anything, those Unmasked and Dynasty need less keyboards and more cowbell.
Amen.
All right, so let's move on here. I think I'll take up the gauntlet for what I think is the most overrated album of the makeup era, and people are going to shoot me. I'm going to hold it up. Love Gun. I think is so overrated in comparison with the 5 studio albums that came before it. In the makeup era, there's just too much filler on this album for me. It's stuff that does not work. It does not feel fully realized. I think the production, Love Gun, is the Crazy Nights of the 70s. It is just so sonically neutered to me. It's just too sterile sounding overall. But it's the material. And I just never got into stuff like Hooligan, Almost Tube, Plasticaster. I think Then She Kissed Me is an absolutely atrocious and dreadful cover. And Got Love for Sale didn't do a thing for me either. So that's half of the album. Tomorrow and Tonight, just paint-by-numbers attempt at anthem. It has nothing going for it for me. But the high points on the album, I Still Your Love, Christine 16, Shock Me, and Love Gun are really high. Those are there's no denying where they sit in the Kiss catalog. It's just the other songs on it I find are substandard crap. That sounds so
that
polished.
Hurts.
Yeah, it's like a turd that's been polished in some ways to me. Even though the tour is one of the greatest tours of the band's history, the album is a victim of the 2 albums per year rushing material out. I think a lot of those songs could have been far better. Like Not Writing Tomorrow and Tonight would probably be a good start for that one.
Wow.
Man, I love that song. I think it's amazing.
Now, real quick, I gotta ask. I love the live version of I Still Love, but I can't tolerate the studio. Do you guys hear that beep at the beginning that plays in the song? Like next time you listen to it, like the first verse, you hear this beep that just goes off, and like I was actually hoping when he did the deluxe edition, it was going to be removed because they like remastered the album again, and it's still there. I kid you guys not. Go listen to I Still Your Love, and like within the first second line of the first verse, there's this like random beep that pops.
Yeah, I hear that. So
Wow, I need to
and
check
that just
that out.
like it ruins the song for me. I'm like, well, there goes a good song right there. You guys did a bad job of recording and mastering here. So,
but for me, I mean, in the first episode, I sang the praises of Rock and Roll Over because I like the gritty sound and I like the material on that. And I remember, other panelists were saying, well, that one's overrated. But Love Gun's supposed to be the height of the band, really. But I say, give me the stuff off the studio side of Alive 2 any day of the week. If you took those 5 songs and replaced the 5 songs I just insulted on Love Gun, you have a killer 1977 album without having to be tortured with Got Love for Sale or, Almost Human. I mean, Plaster Caster is humorous, but I just don't think it's a very good Kiss song. Hooligan, I'm sorry. That is just dreadful. So, Kiss fans, I'm ready. I've got the target. I'll just put it right here. Put one on my back as well. I think Love Gun is overrated, and that's probably why I ranted about the deluxe edition as vehemently as I did, apart from the poor selection of bonus material. So,
yeah, for me, when I look back on my fandom with the band, I mean, I jumped in real early on, so I have a hard time separating the record and my attachment to it because I was at the height of my Kiss geekdom with Love Gun. That to me, I wouldn't say it's my favorite album, and I don't think it's the best album. Man, Almost Human. I think the Gene cuts in particular are some of my favorite on the record. I think Almost Human is an amazing song. I think it's just killer. So very different from anything that Gene had done up to that point. Some might consider it sort of to be the natural progression from God of Thunder, but Gene didn't write God of Thunder. So I think Almost Human is really about the only character-driven Gene song that really ties in with his persona that he wrote himself. I think God Love for Sale is killer. And about the only song on the album that I'm not a real big fan of is Then She Kissed Me, although I think the guitar solo on that is very sweet. I think Paul did a good job, even though it's real simple. And, that's really about it. Hooligan, maybe too. It's another one that's not real strong, but I love the rest of the record. And I think Tomorrow and Tonight is totally underrated. I think a lot of people give it a hard time because it seems to be almost a shout it out loud part 2 in some respects, but I think it's got a great hook. I could have lived without maybe the female backup singers in there at the end, but apart from that, I think it's got some great energy and a good hook.
I never understood why they went to the Crystals. Is it just because of "Kissed Me" being in the title? It just doesn't make any sense because they were capable of picking cool covers. Look at 2000 Man and Any Way You Want It. Great bands to cover. So. I mean, it seemed a lot of the bands in the 70s started doing stupid covers. I mean, Aerosmith did Remember Walking in the Sand. The difference for me between Aerosmith and Kiss's covers is Aerosmith's actually worked because Walking in the Sand I think it's a fantastic one, and Then She Kissed Me is just crap.
How that ended up on the album and not something else. I mean, it looked like, there's only 9 songs on Love Gun, and it looked like they just threw it on there just to fill up time. But wasn't Julian, you'll know this more than the rest of us, but wasn't Rocket Ride demoed for Love Gun, and they didn't use it, and they ended up using it on Live 2, or is that not accurate?
I don't know on that one. I think Rocket Ride, he said he wrote on the way to Japan, or
okay, maybe I'm wrong.
Part of that, but
I don't know. You would just think they could find something else to throw on there instead of that demo that ended. And it's really kind of you listen to that at the end of Love Gun. You can almost kind of sense the change that's coming within the band, that they're throwing that on there at the end, and then you look at the next Studio Kiss album is Dynasty, and you do hear the change in the band. But I don't know. I really, Love Gun's really partial to me because, like Jay was saying, it goes back to how that album came into my life too, and why it's important to me, and why I like that album so much. It's one of the first albums I had on cassette tape as a small kid, and I wore that thing out. I mean, it to the point that it didn't even play anymore, but I still have it just for sentimental reasons because it's one of the first Kiss things that I owned. So I was really excited when the band started playing Plaster Caster on those shows they did in Mexico, and then that they did it on the cruise. I was really hoping that they'd continue on and play it in Vegas when I went out there, but they didn't. I was kind of disappointed, but I really like, and I was excited when they did Almost Human on the cruise a few years ago too. That it's one of those songs that I grew up listening to, and it's like, it's great. But I'm sorry, I love Love Gun. It has a special place in my heart.
Yeah, it was cool to hear both of those songs live. I just don't hold them in very high esteem. And there's that copy of like an early version of the album's back cover that has a song on it called "See You Baby." I'd love to know more about that.
I know.
And then as far as Then She Kissed Me, I just wonder, did Peter have a hand in that? Did he have a tantrum or something and say, I want to have a cover? Because I don't see Paul or Gene or Ace having any connection with 1963's Crystal's music, whereas that seems to fit more in with the doo-wop of Peter's early career. So that I don't know whether I'm adding 1 + 1 together and getting 3, in which case, Peter, I'm sorry. And if not, we'd love to know why.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly couldn't see Eddie Kramer saying, hey, guys, really, you should consider bringing in a girl group song to close your album. So, yeah, that's definitely a mystery for sure, where that song...
So out there, we'd love to hear everyone else's thoughts. Why on earth or how did Then She Kissed Me get on the album? So that would be a great one to have a conversation about. All right, let's move away from the hate I'm going to get on that on that choice. I'm going to hide a little bit for a bit. So move on to Alex again.
I think the most overrated, and I'm going to get a lot of flack for this one, is the all-time classic Destroyer. I think it's an overrated album. Don't get me wrong. I love Detroit Rock City King of the Nighttime World. I love the resurrected version of it, the 2012 editions of it. I think Beth is a great track, but I don't know. Sweet Pain's never done it for me. Flaming Youth, it depends upon the time of the month and the mood I'm in for a song.
Alex, I think we're losing your connection here.
Oh, no.
I hear static on the line.
Do You Love Me? It wasn't. I tell you what, though, the Kiss Symphony with the symphony, I thought that was a great representation of those songs. Like I love King of the Nighttime World with the symphony, Detroit Rock City, that one too. I think it's a great hit. I don't know. I think it's just overrated by how much everybody likes it too much. And then I just God of Thunder on the album. I tell you, I would love a version without Bob Ezrin's kids. I'm sorry, Bob Ezrin, if you watch this video, this alternate put your kids on the album. It's like throwing on the original version of Sweet Pain with Ace's solo. Can you throw on the original version of God of Thunder without your kids and those stupid sounds I'm making? I think it ruined the song, in my opinion. So that's just me. I'm sorry, guys.
Wow.
I mean, you have a different perspective because you weren't there when the album came out. But what's actually interesting about what you said about Destroyer is that is exactly what about 90% of Kiss fans thought when Destroyer came out in 1976. I remember when it came out. That was actually the first Kiss record I owned. I'd been a fan already for a couple of years, so I already knew what to expect. When Destroyer came out, that was such a hard curveball that it was difficult to digest. So what you're saying actually doesn't surprise me because a lot of fans felt that way. And I guess if you maybe were more attached to the makeup era, it might be harder to say that. Obviously, you're objective enough to see it for what it is. It's definitely a different Kiss record. It's definitely a huge departure from what they sounded like. There's no other Kiss record in the catalog that comes close to sounding like that.
Well, not if you ask Gene. Everything's an ex-Destroyer. Come on.
Oh, I know. That seems to be sort of just the thing to say. But yeah, I think Destroyer is an amazing album. But I can totally understand why some Kiss fans even today wouldn't be blown away by it.
But like I said too, the live versions of the songs. So I just think the studio album of the songs. I could care less. I'd rather hear like if it was a Kiss Symphony version of those songs. Or I love the Life 2 of Detroit Rock City and King of the Nighttime War 2. I think those are great representations of the material from the album.
With the exception of Sweet Pain and Shout It Out Loud, I love that album. I know that they've said, Paul was calling Bob Ezrin every day, leaving messages after the album was done, before it was released. They were freaking out. They were listening to it. They probably let some people hear it and like, oh my God, that's so different from what it was. And I think at one point they were even talking about trying to get Jack Douglas to remix it because it was just too polished, too different. But Detroit Rock City and King of the Nighttime World is probably the strongest 1-2 punch on any Kiss album.
Totally.
But as Jay says, you could read the reviews and you could read letters to the in the newspapers in 1976, and the original fans of Kiss were absolutely split by this.
Yep.
It was that first fracturing of the Kiss Army as the band went from something dangerous and leather to something artistic. So
yep.
While it stands as everything is measured next to Destroyer, you can look at it kind of as the first Kiss album.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a big departure with having a boys choir in the background of Great Expectations, coming off of a really just plain rock album with Dress to Kill. It is a change, but I gotta tell you, Destroyer, to me, was my introduction to Kiss. My brother had a cassette of Destroyer, and that's how I discovered Kiss. And Destroyer is just a masterpiece, in my opinion. I said on the first episode that I was on that Revenge is probably my favorite Kiss album majority days of the week, but a close second to that is Destroyer. Destroyer, it's short. It's only like 35 minutes long, but to me it's just epic.
The only thing that really bugs me on the album was finding out that King of the Nighttime World was a cover. That bummed me out so much because I'd always loved that song. I was like, wow, who are these Fowley and Anthony guys? Never heard of them before, which of course I hadn't, and rest in peace, Kim Fowley. But Hollywood Stars, go out on YouTube, check out their original version, and just as you can hear on the box set, listening to the demo of God of Thunder, the demo of Detroit Rock City that circulates out there that JR played drums on, you can see what Bob Ezrin brought to the table with those songs. Not vastly different in the case of King of the Nighttime World, but just so much fully realized. Very cool song, but Hollywood Stars, obviously, be given kudos for writing that song in the first place.
Yeah. I think I think the thing about Destroyer is that really Kiss did not have a defined image as a band until Destroyer. Sure, they had the makeup, and that's iconic, and I understand that, but the Destroyer was really the first realization of the characters within the band. You had songs that were very directly connected to the personas that they were trying to sort of relay to their fans. And Ezrin obviously was very tapped into that, and aware of that. I think Bob Ezrin is just a genius. His work with Alice Cooper, very much in the same way that he did with Kiss. He helped develop Cooper's persona, and the songs were just more sophisticated. And, I think he did the same thing for Kiss. I think that, it was a risky move, and I definitely think that they probably lost some fans along the way when that album came out. But, man, Kiss would not be shit today without Destroyer. I hate to say it, but that was really their breakthrough record. I mean, Alive for sure, but Destroyer was really the first time where they were able to cross into mainstream America and elsewhere, and become a household name.
Yeah, without Destroyer, they would have been a one-hit wonder. It would have been Kiss Alive, as much as we can't go back in time. But for Destroyer to be a hit, thank you, Peter Criss, or thank you, Stan Penridge. Thank you, Stan Penridge and Peter Criss for Beth, because that album, all the singles were bombing from Destroyer. I mean, Flaming Youth, which I love as an anthem, great song. Detroit Rock City, again, great anthem, horribly butchered single, but great song. Shout It Out Loud. All of them, Shout Out Loud made it to 31 in the U.S. charts. So you can legitimately call it a top 40 hit. But Flaming Youth, 74. Detroit Rock City did not chart. Beth, top 10. So Beth was somewhat the saving of Kiss's career, and that says it all for that album, really.
Well, like I said, I don't hate it. I just think it's overrated, and Gary over at Podcast, don't hate me too much for this one.
Gary doesn't hate. All right, Lonnie.
All right, well, I'm going to get it too. I'm going to get it from a guy known as the Sphinx, because I think this album, Lick It Up, is overrated.
Ooh, that's painful. Painful.
Well, you know what?
That hurt.
You guys also said Destroyer's overrated, so, here it comes.
I said Destroyer was overrated.
Yeah, it was him over there. It wasn't me.
Yeah, blame that guy.
I gotta own hating on Love Gun, so we've all got our load to bear.
Well, I don't dislike Lick It Up, but at the same time, I don't hold it in the high regard that a lot of people do. And because of my age, because I got into Kiss when I was 4 with Animalize, Lick It Up wasn't one of the first albums that I went and got. I probably didn't get Lick It Up till I was, maybe 13 or 14 years old. Being a junior high kid and being on a fixed allowance type of income, I had to pick and choose which albums and, which I wanted to get. So Lick It Up wasn't high up there. But I did know the song, obviously, because I had Smashes, Thrashes, and Hits, so I knew Lick It Up, and I knew the video from MTV. But to me, when I finally went and got it, my first copy of it, and it wasn't that memorable to me. And I just think that it was missing the catchy choruses, the catchy riffs, and man, I say catchy riffs, it's missing that. I'm really going to get it from the Vinnie fans, but and then Julian, when I first joined the KissFAQ and I first started getting on chat boards, I saw that people place this album in such high regard, and I thought, well, maybe I'm missing something about Lick It Up because I don't listen to it that much. Maybe I'm missing something. I'm gonna go back and listen to it a few times, and thought, no, I'm not missing anything. I just don't get it. So, and I do like, I do like A Million to One. It's another song that Paul broke out on that Live to Win tour, and I thought that was awesome when he played that live. Really gave the song some justice that it deserved. But Lick It Up to me, I just don't get it, why it's so great. And I love Creatures, but I just don't understand why it's held in such high regard.
I don't know. I think we're gonna throw you to the Vinnie fans, and you're about to get anked. But I love Lick It Up for the most part. Exciter, great starting track. Again, they were on a run of picking the right first songs on the mid-'80s albums, and for that matter, Creatures. I mean, 4 albums in a row. Absolutely fantastic album starting tracks. You might say it's all downhill from there, depending on your perspective of that era. Not for the Innocent. I think the Creatures version that we've only heard in the last few years absolutely blows the Lick It Up version out of the water. But I think Vinny absolutely shines. He's restrained. It's not his insane Vinny Vincent Invasion guitar playing. It is just extremely solid, and if it didn't need an extra note, he didn't play the extra note. The lyrics that he brought into the band, I mean, he's got, 9 out of 10 co-writes on this, or 8 out of 10. He's on just about every track. And you hear the lyrics, because obviously we've heard the Warrior demos, and we know which lyrics came from the songs, but they're, lick my candy cane, just kind of, innuendo, and just the structure of his lyrics. You know where Vinny's involved there, because he had such great pop sensibilities on how to write a good lyric. So I utterly disagree that it's overrated, with the exception of On the Eighth Day, which I can't stand. And maybe
I think the album, I consider it far and away. I'm not saying that Lick It Up is the greatest album ever, but I do think far and away it's for me the greatest non-makeup record the band's ever done.
Yeah.
I just think that. I was resistant to like the album because I think the first single absolutely sucks. I have no idea why Kiss still plays Lick It Up. Well, I mean, I have an idea why, but it's really a shame because I think it's such a flat and uninteresting song compared to the other material on the record. Aside from that, and maybe Dance All Over Your Face, which I still dig, but maybe not on the level of the other songs, I think the album is super strong. I think the production is amazing, so much better to me even than the production on Creatures of the Night, which I thought, that even though the heavy drums were cool, it was almost distracting in places. So I really feel like Lick It Up was just a better album. I think it's a great album. I definitely don't feel that it's overrated, but I can totally get, where you're coming from, because people do tend to sort of hang on to the whole Vinny saved Kiss kind of thing. So maybe it gets lauded as a great album for those reasons, and maybe not for the reasons of songwriting. But I think it's a great album, though.
I'm looking at my iPhone right here because I've gone through and had to pick the different Kiss songs I want to have, and I think Paul's material shines pretty decent on the album. I like Exciter, A Million to One. I love the studio track of Lick It Up. But then, Not Pretty Innocent, that Creatures version with the Paul and Gene trading vocals, it's just amazing. But no, other than that, though, the other tracks I'm not too big on. Dance All Over Your Face. I think Young and Wasted, I think the definitive version for myself of that track, though, has to be from the Animalized Live uncensored video from 1984 with Eric Carr on vocals. I really wish there would have been a version with Eric Carr singing lead on that. He did a great job with it live.
Yeah, Eric should definitely have sung on this album, which is a shame. But Lick It Up, oh God. I mean, in the 80s, I never hated the song. In the 90s, it was only when Paul started ruining it with the extended sections live that I really started to despise that song.
Yeah, I agree, 100%.
I was surprised with how bold he was on the Rock the Nation tour with Lick It Up with his whole live. I like Shaved Beaver and stuff, and I was like, oh, hello. I was 15 at the time. Here comes puberty.
Well, that's better than the Michael Jackson doll. All right. So I think you're going to get it.
Well, we're not Kiss fans if you don't agree. Kiss fans aren't supposed to agree on everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's all right. I'm going to get it too. So.
All right, Jay. Open up.
I got to say for me, Lonnie, don't smack me. I think Revenge is Kiss's most overrated record. And I don't say that as a slam against Revenge, but I think that people's perception of that record may be tainted. And here's kind of what I'm thinking. It was really a toss-up between that one and Animalized, because I think some people, especially maybe more passive Kiss fans, might see Animalized as a greater album than it was because of the single that it spawned. I think Animalized is a terrible record, but I think Revenge is the most overrated. I feel, I'm not saying that it's a bad album. I just think it's overrated. When you break down the material on the album, I think actually, most of Paul's contributions are actually very weak. Tough Love, not feeling it, man. Take It Off, maybe. Heart of Chrome, not so much. Then you got a few of the Gene songs, Paralyzed, just not a great song. It almost seems like it's just an afterthought. Car Jam, sorry. I mean, I'm not saying, anything against Eric, but I can understand the reasons for putting it on there, but I think it detracts from the overall greatness of the record. The Argent cover, while it's nice to see Paul and Gene trading off, because they hadn't done that in so long, I just think that it's just cheesy. And I just I can't get over the fact that it is so close to Summertime Blues that every time I hear the song, I start singing Summertime Blues in my head, and it just on accident, just because of the similarities. So I don't know. I mean, apart from Unholy, which I think is freaking just killer, I think Spit is kind of cool because it's got a great groove to it. And I think Thou Shalt Not, for me, is sort of the undiscovered gem on that record. I think one of Gene's best vocal turns on a Kiss record, and I think it's got killer hooks. But I think Gene pretty much owns that album. I think Every Time I Look at You is also a really, really, really good Paul ballad, much better than Forever, which I thought it hurts my head when I hear that song because Paul sounds like he is literally, his nuts are about to explode. So it was nice to hear. It was nice to hear him in more of a subdued, frame of mind on the record. But that's just my feelings about Revenge. It's great to have Bob Ezrin on board. It's great to have Vinnie Vincent there, contributing to some of the writing. I get all that, but I think when you strip away all those things that tie that album to maybe some of the classic period, and just look at it song by song, I think that it is overrated. I don't think it's a bad album, but I would give it maybe 3.5 stars out of 5. I would definitely not give it 4, and there is no way in hell it would get 5 from me. That's just my opinion.
I'm totally relieved because that was going to be my pick as well. And coming back to 1992, I remember getting that album and looking at the band and going, what the hell? First, it started visually with them just being they just didn't look right, posing, trying to be all hard ass. I felt like they were going for the 14-year-old demographic again with this album.
I was 13 at the time.
So there's the answer. But I hated Unholy. I just did not like the style of the song. My standout songs on this album were Heart of Chrome and Every Time I Look at You. I can leave everything else. It is just I do like God Gave Rock and Roll to You, but the rest of it is just. And again, it was going for a demographic that I had moved out of and maybe didn't want anything to do with. It was like the kids down the block. Oh, here's a Kiss album for you. Oh yeah, cool. They're wearing leather, and looking like Motley Crue and Dr. Feelgood era. Again, that's what I felt they were copying, Motley Crue's image again, and the material. I hate Car Jam 1981. I know why it's on the album. It's just so butchered and wrong to have Bruce replacing Ace's parts on that instrumental. It would have been much more honest to allow Ace's original and the complete version, not just to focus on the drum solo, but again, we know why they did it, and it makes sense, but I just don't like it, and I just hate that song.
I hate it.
I just cannot stand it. I just want to turn it off. And the pho. Oh, for God's sake! I don't get it. And Take It Off and the strippers on the tour. No, Revenge, I do not like. I will never like it. It's got a couple of good songs. It sounds absolutely fantastic for a piece of crap. It is wonderfully produced. Bruce's guitar is insane. If you could take the sound of Revenge and make the demos on Hot in the Shade sound like that, sonically, Hot in the Shade would be a great album. So production-wise, it's fantastic. Guitars, Bruce is like just on fire, doing all the right things, but the songs are not there.
It sounds absolutely fantastic for a piece of crap. That's what I'm taking out of what you just said.
I picked up a CD. I picked up a CD used at a record shop in town, and when I was in high school, and I remember when CD players were still in. I had a CD player And it was tough to get into the album. So my CD player got stolen at school. I was just bummed the CD player got stolen. I wasn't too upset about the CD that was with it. I love God Gave Rock and Roll to You. I love Unholy. I think that's a great track. I didn't like the studio version of I Just Wanna, but I will say in defense for Lisa Lonnie, there's a great, I think it's when Bruce was in Melbourne and Australia on YouTube. They got like the videos and stuff, and he did a revenge medley and stuff. And I will say, like, when I saw the revenge medley, though, it did give me a much more good appreciation for some of the tracks on there. And I've gone back. I think Thou Shalt Not is definitely an underrated gem off the album. I thought there's another song that's on there. Is it Paralyzed? When I hear the word lobotomy, it just weirds me out with that song. And I just have to skip it. And then, like I said, I just want to... I don't like the production of Alive 3, but I like the live version. I don't like the little breakdown part where they're like, like, I thought that was really weird what they did with the little breakdown part when they go slow. But, I mean, it's not a terrible album, but, yeah, it's definitely, I've only got 2 of the songs on the video on my iPhone, so.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think it's a great record. It's just, and I love the fact that Kiss decided to sort of put away the glitzy, glamoury kind of look that preceded it. I mean, I guess they kind of were already in that process with Hot in the Shade, but I loved the look of the band when that album came out. I thought it was refreshing to see them. I mean, at that point, they were totally a non-makeup band anyway. I thought Gene's best look out of makeup. You know, and I remember the world premiere of Unholy on MTV. I had not heard, you know, obviously this is long before the internet, so, you know, none of us had heard any leaks of that record until it premiered. For some people, I guess, some people may have seen it or heard it later, but I saw it on MTV when it premiered, and I was blown away. I was just like, holy shit, this is some serious Kiss. I love Unholy, but yeah, I feel the album's just maybe a little overrated. That's all.
I think the 3 of you are all out of your mind. Number one.
I got it.
It's from the first time I saw the video from Unholy, and I was just blown away. And I think I Just Wanna is a great song. I don't care what the 3 of you say. I love it. And I remember playing I Just Wanna when I was a kid. And I was 13 years old, and singing along to it, and my mom be like, I heard what you were playing up there, and, you know, I don't approve of what you're playing. And I was like, no, Mom, you look at the lyrics, it says, I just want to forget about you. They can write whatever they want on those lyric sheets. I know what they're saying, and I know what you're listening to up there.
That's funny.
And then the fact that God Gave Rock and Roll to You is on there, Take It Off is on there. I'm sorry, when you're 13 years old and your favorite band plays a song called Take It Off about going to a strip club, it's fantastic. And I still think it's fantastic. I love everything on that record. I love the look of the band. I think they finally achieved the look that they were going for from the beginning when they took off the makeup. And I think the songs on there are great. Bruce shines on that album in a way that he doesn't shine on any other Kiss record. I think you really see the talent of Bruce Kulick on that record. And for Eric Singer's debut with Kiss, I think he does a phenomenal job also. I think the drumming on that album is incredible. I think Every Time I Look at You should have spawned the hit that Forever did, and it didn't. I think it's just as good of a song as Forever, if not better.
Better, in my opinion, yeah.
And Paul says that too. That's one of the songs that he thought that would be received a whole lot better than what he did. I read an interview with Paul somewhere. Is there one song that you thought should have spawned to be a hit that didn't? And he said it's Every Time I Look at You. He thought for sure when he wrote that song that would be received the same way Forever was.
Fantastic song and a great video. That's so I don't know. I don't remember ever seeing the video in 1992 because all you saw when you watched videos was Smells Like Teen Spirit. That was it. So I don't remember ever seeing that video. It was only years later that I got to even see it. And of course, Dick Wagner's on that song. He plays the acoustic guitar solo. And if anyone wants to blame the album on anything else, you got Jamie St. James and Tommy Thayer on there as well, singing background vocals with Jesse Damon.
You threw the Tommy Thayer name out there.
I remember being a kid and seeing like the back cover of the album and stuff, like the picture, because they like showed it in the extreme close up. And being a kid, I didn't know like what a leather coat was, but I thought they all were like those hefty black trash bags. I thought that was really weird. I was like, why is there a trash bag? That's stupid. And then I realized they're about leather jackets. So.
I don't know. I'm looking at the back cover right now, and I don't know. I think I need to get my prescription changed because I'm thinking Eric looks a little bit like a short Dave Mustaine. Sorry, Eric. And of course, one other weird fact on that album is there's harmonica on that album played by Jimmy Z.
Is that Paralyzed?
I don't know. I just remember him getting in touch with me and saying, "Hey, I blew the horn on that album." So I've never heard any harmonica on that album.
Maybe Horn was like a production assistant's last name. Maybe he wasn't talking about an instrument.
Wow.
Sorry, I just had to throw that in.
And of course, one other kind of cool thing is Eric Singer's not on Take It Off. That is Kevin Valentine. Yep. So I guess we killed two birds with one stone with that album. But I'm going to move into what I think is the most highly underrated makeup album, and I surprised myself with this one. When I sat down and thought about it for the 30 seconds it took, I'm going to hold up the album. Years on, and we are now, 17 years on from Psycho Circus being released. I think it is underrated, and I think I'm finally able to get over the drama of Ace and Peter not being involved on the album. And I think that's where a lot of my derision for the album originally came from once I found out, because I don't have enough of a musical ear to be able to tell you, oh, that's not Peter Criss playing drums when I first heard it, or that's not Ace playing guitar. I just don't have the musical vocabulary to recognize those sorts of things, and people may be shouting, shame on you, shame on you. You should immediately know it's not Ace and Peter, but I didn't know. But once we started hearing the stories, it really colored my opinion of the album, and I think unfairly. You look at what Paul and Gene did, and Tommy as well, for that matter, since he's all over it on guitar, and I think Kevin Valentine on drums. There is such a lot of good material for what they were trying to do with Bruce Fairbairn. I don't like the production tremendously. It's a little bit too sterile. Again, it sounds like Crazy Nights or maybe Unmasked. But the material and the story that they're trying to tell with the songs, a great opening track like Psycho Circus. Yeah, it's like Detroit Rock City, King of the Nighttime World all over again. A very visual kind of storytelling song, but it's a really cool track. Now I listened to it in Vegas being played again. It's cinematic. The video's crap, but it's a very good song. I Pledge Allegiance to the State of Rock and Roll. I love it. It's a great anthem, as is Raise Your Glasses, even if it got tied in with those god-awful 3D glasses for the tour that never worked properly for me. It's just a fun anthem. Dreaming. I don't care if it sounds like 18 or they thought it sounds like 18. I thought it was a really good lyric, a very good riff, a really cool song. And Journey of 1,000 Years. There's Gene again, going all cinematic. You're tying in the Psycho Circus riff at the end, drawing the whole album together. And I don't think Into the Void, people hate on it, saying it's like not a very good Ace track. I think it's a great Ace track. I think it's a better song of singing about the spaceman than When Lightning Strikes or Tommy's other one. It's Ace doing it. And no matter whether it was Shaping Sharpshooter and it needed a lot of help, whatever. I don't care. I think it's great. The only song I hate on this album is Within. I cannot stand that song. And then you get the dorky kind of We Are One. Well, when they weren't, so what? It's a really cool Beatles type of track that I want to hear more of Gene doing that sort of material. I finally found my way. I will... plead the fifth and refuse to say anything about that because there's nothing worth saying. It's absolute crap. But looking back now, I look at these songs, and I think Psycho Circus, the song, can be considered a classic.
I think it's definitely a classic. I'm not as hard on that album as I think a lot of Kiss fans are. You know, I mean, I'm a huge fan of the originals. That was where my love affair with the band started. So yeah, I was pissed when I found out that it really wasn't truly a reunion record. But still, distancing myself from those emotions and looking at it strictly from a material point of view, I definitely think that Psycho Circus is underrated for sure. You know, I wouldn't put it up in maybe necessarily my top 5 Kiss albums for sure. No. Maybe my top 10 though. But I think there's a lot of great songs on there. Maybe the only issue with that album that I have is that there's too many rallying cry. It's us against the world kind of messages in those songs. So there seems to be, maybe it's a little redundant in places as far as lyrically. But man, I'll tell you what, if they had added, in my opinion, if they had put It's My Life on there and taken out maybe I Finally Found My Way, although I don't have huge issues with that song, but it's nice to hear Peter sing again. But, you know, maybe pull that song out, or Within, or even Dreaming. In my opinion, those are all kind of weak songs for me. Put that It's My Life in there, oh my God, that would have elevated that album at least a half star, if not a full star for me. So that's maybe my only regret about Psycho Circus, but definitely an underrated record for sure.
I remember being in the car, and it was like that pivotal moment when I was a genius as a kid and recognized voices of people. And I remember like hearing I Finally Found My Way, because my dad had the tape. I'm like, yeah, this is Kiss, and he's like, yeah, it is. It's a new album. And I was like, what? We got something new? Like, awesome. And I was super. It was just exciting. I never liked You Wanted the Best. I don't like that little I always thought that was really weird. I agree with you. Like, if they could take out You Wanted the Best and throw It's My Life in that spot, it would have been a solid album. I think. Just for that one track, I'm just like, I mean, it was cool to have a track with all 4 members singing. That was definitely a cool thing it did there. But that was the other one I didn't like. But I always thought it was kind of fun, at least for myself, you know, after reading about, you know, Tommy Thayer playing on Psycho Circus. When Kiss did I Pledge Allegiance to the State in Australia in 2004. And I was like, this is the most accurate performance of any song from Psycho Circus now, because you've got Tommy Thayer and Paul and Gene up there and stuff. So that was kind of funny. I'd love to see them do that song live in a show again. And Psycho Circus, it's a really cool song. I mean, I thought the little clown music intro and stuff, they were going for something really cool. And like you said, Journey of 1,000 Years, that like epic kind of closing everything together, which is super, super cool. And then tying in that riff, the Psycho Circus at the end of it was good. And I will say, I'm not a big fan of Within either, though I did like that alternate version that one can find on YouTube, where it has like the words at the beginning that they were taking out. I thought that was kind of a cool version you could find on YouTube of Within.
Yeah, there's a ton of alternate versions that, you know, people call them demos. They're not. They're from the sessions. They're just different takes, and there's some, you know, different lyrics and raise your glasses. I didn't mention In Your Face, which is, of course, was the bonus track, but I agree with Jay on It's My Life, and we've sung its praises before. One high point I will say about I Finally Found My Way is Paul singing with Peter on that, of course, which I don't think happened on any other album.
I don't know. In my opinion, I just think Psycho Circus followed, like, it was the first album to follow, like, a formula. Okay, you know, we're going to start off with the Paul song, you know, the really strong Paul song with Psycho Circus. We're going to, Ace is going to sing the space song, and Peter's going to sing the ballad, and, you know, we're going to follow the Destroyer model for this, and make it Destroyer Part 2. And it to me, Kiss fans got to have different opinions. To me, it just really falls short for me. And I was 19 when this album came out, and I was really, really looking forward to it. And when I first heard Psycho Circus on the radio in the summer of '98, I thought, wow, I'm going to get an album like this. I was just really maybe even more excited than I already was. And, you know, I think the fact that they chose a song for Peter to sing that Paul has to sing with him in order for it to achieve what they wanted it to, is like, could we not arrange the song differently? And I'm not a musician, but could we not have arranged the song differently that we didn't have to have Paul help Peter out, or could we have picked a different track? I mean, not that. Why are we so stuck on using this song that we had to have Paul help him with it? Wasn't there another ballad brought in if we wanted Peter so desperately to sing a ballad? Do we have to have Paul singing with him? And I think you wanted the best, you got the best. It's just a load of crap. I think it's just desperation that we want. I think it's part of another formula. We want a song where we have all 4 members of the band singing, so we can say that it's all 4 original members back together, and we could. It's crap. I don't like it at all. And I think some of those demos that came out, like Body and Soul or I Want to Rule the World, I think are much better than some of the tunes that ended up on that album, like Dreamin' and like Finally Found My Way and You Wanted the Best. I think those could be replaced with some of those demos, and I think it would have been a much stronger album than what they turned out. And yeah, I didn't know when the album came out that it wasn't the original 4, and then I heard that it wasn't, and I didn't want to believe it, and because I was so into the 4 being back together, I just didn't want to believe the rumors initially that it wasn't them. But, I think it's obvious, and you go back and listen to it now, and not only is it obvious, but, they've come out and said that it's not original 4, it's Kevin Valentine, it's Tommy Thayer. But to me, the album does fall short. I don't think it's underappreciated. I think it is what it is.
See, I'll agree with you on You Wanted the Best. I hate that ending of Paul faking the British accent.
Oh yeah, that really sucks.
That just makes
faking like they're getting along.
It's just so contrived, but that always
laughing like, oh, we're just one big happy family living in the same house.
Like the Parasite riff at the end.
Oh yeah, but that just reminds me of a Sex Pistols song where at the end of that they're kind of mocking the Beatles and I hope we pass the audition, and trying to do the Beatles accent. That just reminds me of that, but it's just so, that whole. And it was such a stupid choice for a single. But okay, simple as that. My opinion of this album has increased over the years as I've gotten over it.
Real quick, Julian, didn't he try to bring the song Hope, which was on one?
Yeah, he did. That was one of the songs he brought, and he put it on his album. And I don't see the difference really between Hope and I Finally Found My Way, other than the song. Yeah, and other than the songwriting credits that would have gone with it, because one's written by Paul Stanley and Bob Ezrin, and the other isn't. So, did he have a choice? And he also brought in one written with Tommy Thayer called Together. So, what could have been? Now we hear Body and Soul. I know absolutely why that wasn't included, because I think that is dreadful. That's right up there with some of the worst Kiss-related songs we've been, fortunate to hear. But, It's My Life, definitely. Should have been on the album and could have changed it. But again, for being an album that I think is underrated, I'm surprised I do. When I was thinking about it, I kind of amazed myself that I was able to say anything positive about Psycho Circus other than being the first album I ever downloaded in advance off the internet. I think that was the first one that leaked for Kiss fans, so really cool. Yeah. So it's aged well and probably sounds a bit better for me personally now than it did. All right, so out of the circus, let's go back to Alex for, I think, your last pick.
Okay. I guess the underrated non-makeup album for me, and it's another album that has like a huge divide. Carnival Souls. I think
that's mine too.
It's definitely I'll give it. It's not your regular Kiss album. I'll give it that. I'm sure it was them trying to be with the time, but I think just if you put that aside, even if you just put away the Kiss aspect of it and just put on the album to listen to a good hour's worth of music, it's a great album. Bruce Kulick's writing and playing on there is excellent. You read Paul's, biography, and he, kind of talked that wasn't his thing to do and stuff. But I think it's a great album. I remember picking it up in high school. I got a German issue. I was all excited. I felt like super cool, like the cool guys, the cool Kiss collections, just rare things. And I got a German issue and stuff, and even got my copy signed by Bruce in 2008. And we thought one of my favorite albums. And he was super cool with it on that aspect. But I think it's a great album. I think I love Jungle. I love Hate and Rain, the first 2 tracks. Master and Slave, I think it's such a cool track. Especially the whole part where Paul's like, wake up and starts, and you think he's going to say scream, but instead he actually screams. I think that's like one of like the funniest like trolling moments of a Kiss song there. He totally kind of gets you on that. And I love I Walk Alone. I think it's a great track with Bruce singing it. There's a great live version that Bruce did with that song with Union live at the Galaxy. Excellent live version of the song. And I think the only track I wasn't a huge fan of was In My Head. That one's kind of like a little bit weird with just like the lyrics and stuff. But other than that, I think it's a great underrated album. I was disappointed with the vinyl release. The packaging on that was piss poor. That's a good album.
Hey, you know, how much effort were they going to put in for an album that's going to sell 10 copies?
I guess so. I mean, if you remember too, Julian, I think I mentioned on the KissFAQ message board, the fact that on the Carnival Souls on the spine it had a Casablanca Records logo on it. And
Yeah.
it's like,
What?
Yeah, I didn't even notice that, but Carnival for Souls for me, yeah, it can stay where it is. I think it sounds absolutely dreadful. If Psycho Circus's Destroyer 2, Carnival of Souls is like Hotter Than Hell 2 for a bad-sounding Kiss record.
Yeah.
However, as far as it goes, for me, other than people say Revenge was Gene's comeback album, I think this is Gene's comeback album. All of his songs, with the exception of In My Head, are absolutely insanely good. I mean, Seduction of the Innocent and I Confess. I absolutely love I Confess. This was really more the first album that I really felt Gene was better than Paul. I don't think I Walk Alone's a good song in any way, and I don't think it did Bruce any favors as his vocal debut. But I think Bruce on this album is stunning again, just as you kind of expect. The guitars on this just need to have production qualities applied to it. Again, I've said it for Revenge and Hot in the Shade. Well, if Carnival of Souls had the crisp and clear production values of Revenge, it would be a way better album. But instead it sounds like it's in a box.
The drums in particular sound just terrible on that record. I think there's too much compression and limiting on that record, so it sounds very boxy. And I've actually had to go in and use audio editing software to widen the stereo spectrum and give it maybe a little more high end, because it does seem it's not so much that it's bottom heavy, it's just that it's muffled. Mm-hmm. And once I kind of decrapped the sound with my trusty Adobe Audition, I actually got the sounding pretty good, at least to my ears. And I agree with you. I think Gene owns that record. I think Childhood Zen might very well be the best thing Gene has written without makeup, at least in my opinion, since the makeup era. I think Childhood Zen is such a well-written song. And I think I Confess and Seduction of the Innocent as well are both great songs. They're very stylistically diverse, very different from, I think, what most of, Gene usually doesn't put a whole lot of thought into songs. And maybe I can't credit Gene for being maybe more thoughtful as far as constructing those songs, because there were other guys involved, and maybe they should take the credit for that. I don't know. But just the end product, those 3 songs, I think, are standouts for that record. So I agree with you there. Gene definitely, I think, owns the record. And I don't have an issue with I Walk Alone. I think, I'm not crazy about, Bruce isn't a great singer, but I absolutely love the chiming guitars that sort of run through that song, especially some of the backward tracking there on the record. I think it's cool. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the album. It's not a bad album, but it's just, to me, it's not a Kiss album. It doesn't feel like one.
I really like it. I think it's very underrated. I totally agree with Alex. The sheer aggression with how the album starts with Hate is just, when they were writing that album, I remember them saying that it's going to pick up where Revenge left off, and Hate picks up where Revenge left off. In my opinion, it's just hard crunching guitars and just very, very aggressive. With a strong Gene song to start the record, just like Revenge. And coming back with Rain and Master and Slave, I really dug Master and Slave, and it's one of those albums that, I had the bootleg of it before the official release came out, as I'm sure a lot of people did, because it was so heavily leaked. And I really enjoyed it. I still enjoy it today. I think Jungle is phenomenal. It's a Paul song. You guys are raving about Gene's songs, but I think Jungle is fantastic. And I think, going back to Master and Slave, I really like that tune. And I just think it's really strong, and it got dismissed immediately upon its release for being, it's Kiss following a trend with being a grunge record. And it was, it wasn't even hardly promoted at all when it was released, because I think the record company felt like they had to release it because it was so heavily bootlegged. And I remember going to Best Buy when it came out, and Best Buy didn't even have it. I had to go to another. I had to go search it out after school that day, because my Best Buy down the street from my house didn't even have it, and I couldn't believe it. But I really enjoyed that album, and that was my album I was going to pick as a underappreciated non-makeup album. I love the aggression on it.
It's aggressive, but Hate's like a poor facsimile of Unholy for me. And Jungle, go listen to Deep Purple's You Fool No One. It's if I want to sing the praises of a Paul song on that album, I'm going to pick I Will Be There, which is, I just think, an absolutely fantastic song. But everything else on it, and I remember when Phonogram, or whatever the UK label was that sent me my copies, I was looking forward to it. I was like, this is going to sound better than the bootleg everyone and their dog had by then. And then it sounded just as bad
just
as
just like the bootleg.
That was one of the lowest moments. Here we are, I thought, okay, it's been leaked. Here comes the official release. And yeah, it was thrown out there. Packaging really was pretty basic. I'm glad they released it. It would have been a terrible waste to not get, some money for it, but doesn't hold up particularly well. And I don't think it sounds anything like Alice in Chains. They didn't downtune or do the harmonies like Alice in Chains. That's more of a insult to Alice in Chains than it is a compliment to Kiss copying anyone.
Yeah, I think Paul as a singer, his style is so at odds with the dark, creepy vibe that I think he tried to go for in some of those songs. It just sounds to me, if this had been a Gene solo album, I would totally have loved it. But Paul just seems so uncomfortable in places. Master and Slave, I think Paul sounds really uncomfortable in places. Just he's trying to be all, I don't know. That doesn't fit, to me at least, how I see Paul Stanley as a performer and as a singer. So it just maybe it's just so different. That's why I'm not crazy about it. But yeah, I definitely think that it kind of deserves to be where it is.
Bottom of the barrel. Paul Stanley, the preacher, the rock and roll party guy, doing stuff like In the Mirror, Rain. I think it's gonna rain down on. Come on, it's just so depressing.
Yeah.
You almost need to have therapy after listening to it.
It's definitely dark.
I thought we weren't going to talk about this, Julian.
All right, so let's move on from Carnival of Souls. Who's left? Because I've lost track.
I don't. I didn't really put a lot of thought into the other. I guess I didn't realize that we were doing the makeup, non-makeup kind of thing. So I didn't really have a backup plan. But thinking about it, and it'll be, good thing is it won't take but just a second, is I kind of agree with you in that for underrated non-makeup album, I would say Asylum for sure. I don't hate the album. I actually like it quite a lot. It may be up there with my non-makeup albums. Yeah, there's some fluff in there. I'm not crazy about Love's a Deadly Weapon. But I think Secretly Cruel, for me, that song, especially in hindsight, because at the time I didn't really pay much attention to it, but over the years I've looked back, and if there's any one moment in the 80s that I feel like Kiss reconnected with the classic sound, it would be Secretly Cruel. To me, that song sounds like it could have been lifted off of the Love Gun record, or maybe even Destroyer. Not production-wise, but just writing, songwriting. But I think Asylum, catches maybe a little flack because of the look that accompanied that record, and of course the hideous cover art. I mean, got to be one of the absolute worst in the Kiss canon. But I think the album for the most part is pretty strong. I've never been real crazy about the singles from that record. Who Wants to Be Lonely or Tears Are Falling. They're okay. I can see how they have crossover appeal. I can see why those were chosen as singles, but I'm not particularly fond of them. I do see some parallels, again, between it and Animalize. Any way you slice it, Burn Bitch Burn. So maybe there is a bit of a cut and paste as far as their approach to the record, but I think the production's better. I think the guitar playing's better. And I think the arrangements are more compact and tighter. I think there's more hooks on the record. So yeah, I'll go with your Asylum for sure. I think that's the underrated non-makeup record for sure.
Probably a big mistake to have put the band's auras on their lipstick on that album cover, assigning Bruce Blue and Eric Green.
Yeah.
Probably the first time they really skirted with, Danger. But one thing, if they'd packaged this up and brought back like the Dynasty straitjackets and done a photo shoot in a in a padded cell, just like Motley Crue and Dr. Feelgood, if you've ever seen inside that album. If they'd done that sort of thing for Asylum, it would have, number one, made more sense with the album title rather than Paul picking up the visuals of that Motel's album cover and saying, oh, that's a really cool color palette or style or whatever. But one thing, if you go out onto YouTube, and hopefully it's still up there, there's this guy called Double Virgo who does a reinterpretation of, I think, Love's a Deadly Weapon, or is it Secretly Cruel? Secretly Cruel. And that has got to be one of the best cover versions of a song done by anyone at any time. And the video this guy put together, he plays all the instruments on it, is absolutely insanely cool. And so it's an 85 song with a 70s vibe. Go out onto YouTube and find that. That is absolutely awesome. One of the best things I've ever seen done by a fan.
And he has the isms down too, like the Gene with the kind of like demon.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and one of the guys on the board, or maybe, I don't know if it was done by him, who's posted the alternative cover of Asylum. He kind of black and whited it, and, some of the stuff fans do is really cool. So, yeah, I'm glad someone else can at least find something positive to say about Asylum. Thank you. Checks in the post.
Right on.
All right, guys, we've gone through a pick. Any last words on underrated, overrated?
Be happy with what you like to listen to. Don't pay attention to our opinions.
Yeah, you got to like what you got to like, and I think you also got to be willing to go back and listen to something with clear ears. I'm still kind of shocked that I picked Psycho Circus. I'm kind of shocked that I bagged on Revenge as much as I did.
I am too.
And
I'm shocked that you bagged on Love Gun.
I was hoping to deflect anything else on Love Gun, but there we are. I think we can probably wrap this up. So, gentlemen, thank you as always for joining.
Thank you.
Everyone out there, if you're listening or watching on YouTube, we are always open to get new faces on the FAQ podcast. We want to be about the board and represent everyone and all the opinions that you've got. So get in touch if you want to come on the show. We're going to keep talking about all the sorts of things Kiss fans do. So thank you all for joining us today. Be well. See you next time. Bye now.
Right on.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Have a good one, everyone.